Blood dripped from the broken containment field as Subject 47 Theta tore through another steel barrier. Dr. Amara Okonkwo watched her monitor screens go dark one by one, each representing another security checkpoint the creature had destroyed. 3 months of careful study were ending in chaos, and she had no idea why. The Thornback should have been sedated, should have been calm, should have been contained behind walls designed to hold creatures twice its size and 3 times its strength. Instead, it moved through the research wing like a living storm, 12 feet of armored muscle and desperation. All units, weapons free! Lieutenant Owen Cardoso's voice cracked through the station speakers. Subject 47 Theta is to be terminated on sight. Amara ran toward the security office, her tablet clutched in one hand. Something was wrong with this picture. The creature wasn't attacking people. Guards fired plasma rounds at it, and the Thornback simply pushed through the pain, never stopping, never turning to fight back. It had a destination. She burst into the security office where Cardoso stood surrounded by holographic displays showing the creature's path through Station Prometheus 7. The Orbital Academy hung above a massive gas giant, home to 3,000 personnel from 40 different species. Right now, all of them were in danger from a predator that came from Ravis Prime, a death world so hostile that most species considered it uninhabitable. Lieutenant, look at its path. Amara pointed at the map. It's not trying to escape. It's going somewhere specific. Cardoso glanced at her, his face hard. It's going toward civilian quarters. We need to stop it before it reaches populated areas. But why would it go there? Death world predators flee when injured. This one is taking fire and not even trying to dodge. Amara pulled up the creature's biological data on her tablet. Look, hormone levels. These readings indicate recent separation from offspring. The lieutenant leaned closer, studying the data. You're saying it's a mother? I'm saying we took a mother away from her cubs and she wants them back. Another explosion rocked the station as the Thornback crashed through a reinforced bulkhead. Amara and Cardoso watched the security feed as the creature emerged in Habitat Ring C, bleeding from dozens of wounds, its armored hide scorched and torn. It should have been dead. Should have given up. Should have done anything except what it did next. It stopped outside one door, Unit C-247, and it sat down. The Thornback made a sound that Amara had never heard in 3 months of research. The audio pickups translated it through the station's universal language system, and the words that appeared on screen made several security officers step back from their weapons. Cubs. Mine. Please. Who lives in C-247? Amara asked. Cardoso checked his roster. Dennis Wright, human salvage worker. Single occupancy. We need to talk to him before your people kill that creature. The lieutenant hesitated, then nodded. Wright is finishing his shift in Bay 7. I'll have him brought here. 20 minutes later, Dennis Wright stood in the security office, covered in grease from a double shift repairing salvage drones. He was a tall man with tired eyes and rough hands, the kind of person who worked hard and kept to himself. Right now, those tired eyes were wide with fear. What's this about? He asked. Mr. Wright, do you have any animals in your quarters? Amara asked gently. Dennis went pale. I can explain. Explain quickly, Cardoso said. There's a 12-foot predator sitting outside your door and we need to know why. Dennis sat down heavily. 2 weeks ago I was on a salvage run. Found a wrecked research vessel drifting near the asteroid belt. Most of it was stripped clean, but in one cargo hold I found 3 small creatures. They were in a broken cage, barely alive, no food, no water. Just babies crying in the dark. He pulled out his personal tablet and showed them images. 3 small creatures, each about the size of a large cat, covered in soft scales and downy fur. They looked like miniature versions of the monster currently bleeding outside his quarters. I called it in, Dennis continued, followed all the proper channels. But every department I contacted said the same thing. Unregistered biological specimens from a death world. No rescue protocols. They'd be disposed of as hazardous waste. Amara felt her chest tighten. So you took them. I couldn't leave them to die. They were babies, scared and alone and hurting. I smuggled them onto the station and I've been caring for them ever since. They're gentle creatures, smart, they play with toys. They curl up when they sleep. They're not monsters. Cardoso pulled up the official records on the Thornback's capture. According to this, Subject 47 Theta was captured alone on Ravis Prime 3 months ago. Cubs were listed as deceased specimens, disposed of according to protocol. Someone lied, Amara said. Someone falsified those records. On the security monitors, the thornback remained sitting outside Dennis's door. It had stopped trying to break through. It just waited, occasionally making that mournful sound that translated as a plea. Dennis stood up. I need to see her, please. If she's their mother, if she's been looking for them this whole time, then she deserves to see her children. That creature is a deathworld predator, Cardoso said. Protocol demands immediate termination. Protocol also demands we don't separate intelligent creatures from their offspring, Amara countered. And that we don't traffic in illegal exotic specimens. Someone broke protocol long before Mr. Wright did. The lieutenant stared at the monitors, watching the wounded creature wait with impossible patience. Finally, he nodded. I'm going to regret this. Wright, you're coming with us, Dr. Okonkwo. Bring your medical kit. If this goes wrong, I want it on record that I advised against it. They moved through the station corridors with a full security escort. When they reached Habitat Ring C, the thornback's massive head turned toward them. Its eyes, Amara noticed, were not the blank stare of a mindless predator. They were intelligent, aware, desperate. Dennis stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. I'm going to open my door. Your babies are safe. I promise. They're safe. The thornback watched him approach. 20 weapons were aimed at its head. One wrong move would end its life instantly. It had to know this. It had to understand the danger. But when Dennis reached his door panel, the creature did not move except to lower itself closer to the ground, making itself less threatening. The door slid open, and 3 small shapes rushed toward the gap. The cubs had grown in 2 weeks of proper care, now twice the size they had been in that dark cargo hold. They cried out in voices that were half chirp and half roar, pressing against the force field that separated them from their mother. The thornback made that sound again, but this time it was different. This time it was joy mixed with anguish. She pressed her scarred face against the barrier from the other side, and her cubs did the same. And everyone watching understood they were seeing something that transcended species and language. They were seeing a mother reunited with her children. Dennis knelt beside the cubs, tears streaming down his face. I kept them safe. I promise I kept them safe. The thornback's eyes met his, and in that moment Amara saw something that would change everything. She saw recognition, gratitude, understanding between 2 species that should have been enemies. She saw the beginning of something new. Dennis pressed his hand against the force field, watching the cubs tumble over each other trying to reach their mother. Behind him, 20 armed guards waited for orders to fire. The thornback's blood pooled on the corridor floor, but she showed no sign of aggression. Only loss. Only longing. Someone needs to explain how this happened, Commander Ishiro Tanaka's voice cut through the moment like a blade. The station commander stood at the end of the corridor, his uniform perfect despite the emergency. Dr. Okonkwo, report. Amara tore her eyes away from the reunion scene. Commander, the official records state Subject 47 Theta's cubs were deceased at time of capture. Those records are false. Mr. Wright found 3 cubs alive in an abandoned research vessel 2 weeks ago, and decided to smuggle deathworld predators onto my station, Tanaka said coldly. Mr. Wright, you are under arrest for violation of Quarantine Protocol 7 and endangering station personnel. Dennis didn't move from his position beside the cubs. Sir, with respect, they would have died if I'd followed proper channels. Every department I contacted wanted to dispose of them as biological waste. Because they are biological waste, Tanaka snapped. Deathworld creatures cannot be domesticated. They cannot be trusted. 3 years ago, a station similar to this one tried to study a predator from a Class 9 deathworld. 47 people died when containment failed. One of those people was my sister. The corridor went silent. Even the cubs seemed to sense the weight of those words. Amara stepped forward carefully. Commander, permission to examine the original capture records more closely. Something about this situation doesn't follow standard research protocol. Tanaka stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. You have 2 hours. Lieutenant Cardoso, maintain current containment. If that creature moves aggressively, terminate it immediately. As the commander left, Dennis finally stood up. He looked at the thornback, really looked at her, seeing past the armor and teeth to the wounds that covered her body. She needs medical attention. She's going to die if someone doesn't help her. I can't authorize treatment of a hostile specimen, Cardoso said, though his voice lacked conviction. She's not hostile, Dennis said quietly. She had 100 chances to kill people during her escape. She didn't. She just wanted her children back. Amara was already pulling up files on her tablet, searching through the capture records. Something nagged at her mind, some detail that didn't fit. The Thornback had been captured on Ravis Prime during a routine survey mission. The report stated she was a wild specimen alone, no signs of domestication or tool use in the surrounding area. But that couldn't be right. Wild Thornbacks were solitary hunters. They didn't keep their cubs with them past the first few weeks of life. Yet this mother had traveled across half the station, through weapons fire and barriers to reach offspring that were now over 3 months old. Dennis, can you show me the cubs? Amara asked. He nodded and deactivated the interior force field of his quarters. The 3 cubs rushed to him immediately, chirping and climbing over his legs. They were beautiful creatures, their scales shifting between gray and green as they moved, their eyes bright with intelligence. And around each cub's neck was something that made Amara's breath catch. A collar, not metal or synthetic, but woven from plant fibers in an intricate pattern. Where did these collars come from? She asked. Dennis looked confused. They were wearing them when I found them. I thought they might be some kind of research markers. Amara photographed the collars and ran them through the station's database. The results came back within seconds, and they changed everything. Lieutenant, Commander, you need to see this, she called through the command channel. 5 minutes later, Tanaka and Cardoso stood in Dennis's quarters staring at the cubs in their collars. Amara pulled up her findings on the main display. These collars are made from fibers native to Ravis Prime, she explained. The weaving pattern matches cultural artifacts from the Ravis people, a Stone Age civilization that occupied the southern continent. The Galactic Council declared them extinct 3 years ago. What does that have to do with this situation? Tanaka asked. Everything, sir. The Ravis people didn't hunt Thornbacks. They lived with them. Archaeological evidence shows a domestication relationship going back at least 10,000 years. Thornbacks were companion animals, protectors, and hunting partners. Cardoso looked at the Thornback still waiting patiently in the corridor. You're saying someone's pet followed her cubs across space? More than a pet, Amara said. These collars represent a bond between species. The Ravis people are supposedly extinct, but this Thornback was caring for cubs in the traditional way of that culture. Someone on Ravis Prime might still be alive. She pulled up more files. I've been reviewing all the security footage from the escape. Watch this. The footage showed the Thornback's path through the station. Again and again she had clear shots at personnel. Security guards stood directly in her path, trying to slow her down. She knocked them aside without using her claws or teeth. She broke through walls instead of through people. She understood that hurting people would make it harder to reach her cubs, Amara said. That level of reasoning, that restraint under extreme stress, indicates sophisticated training and intelligence. Dennis sat on the floor with the cubs crawling over him. They respond to commands, simple ones but clear. Sit, stay, come, and they work together. Yesterday, one of them got stuck behind a storage container. The other 2 called to me until I came to help. They problem solve. Tanaka's expression remained hard, but something shifted in his eyes. Dr. Okonkwo, where was the Thornback captured exactly? Amara pulled up the location data. Coordinates indicate the southern continent near what used to be a Ravis settlement. Used to be? The settlement was destroyed 4 years ago. Unknown cause. The survey team that captured Subject 47 Theta reported finding her near the ruins. The commander was quiet for a long moment, staring at the wounded creature in the corridor. So we took a survivor from a dead civilization, stole her children, and now she's dying on my station floor. She's dying trying to protect what she loves, Dennis said softly. That's not the action of a mindless predator. Cardoso cleared his throat. Sir, I have other security feeds you should see. Crew members have been watching this situation develop. There's already talk about what we're doing here. He pulled up internal communication channels. Messages were spreading through the station's network. Images of the mother and cubs pressed against opposite sides of the force field. Videos of Dennis caring for the small creatures. Arguments in crew forums about protocols versus compassion. Some personnel are calling for immediate termination, Cardoso said. But more are asking why we're keeping them separated. A new voice came through the command channel. It was harsh and clicking, translated by the station's systems into standard language. This is Council Inspector Chirek. I am en route to your station regarding the Deathworld specimen incident. The creatures are to be prepared for immediate disposal upon my arrival. No exceptions. Tanaka's jaw tightened. Dennis looked up, his face pale. The cubs, sensing his distress, pressed closer to him, making soft sounds of concern. The thornback, hearing the transmission, made that pleading sound again. It echoed through the corridor, and Amara's tablet automatically translated the complex vocalizations. Cubs. Safe. Promise. Please. Promise. She was trying to communicate, trying to negotiate, trying to do anything that might save her children's lives. Amara looked at Tanaka. Commander, before that inspector arrives, I need permission to run one more search. The research vessel Dennis found, the one carrying the cubs, I need to know where it came from. Why? Because someone falsified records about those cubs being dead. Someone took them from their mother. And I think someone was planning to sell them. Tanaka stared at the thornback, at Dennis, at the cubs wearing their hand-woven collars. Finally, he nodded. You have until the inspector arrives. Find me proof. As Amara rushed back to her lab, Dennis remained on the floor, surrounded by 3 small creatures who trusted him completely. And in the corridor beyond, their mother waited, bleeding and patient, hoping against hope that these strange 2-legged beings would understand what she was trying to say. That love was love, regardless of what form it wore. Amara's fingers flew across her keyboard as lines of data scrolled past her screen. Somewhere in these files was the truth about who took the cubs and why. The research vessel Dennis had salvaged was registered to a private company called Exotic Horizons, but the company's records were sealed behind multiple layers of encryption. She wasn't alone in her lab. Dennis had been given temporary clearance to stay with the cubs, and he'd brought all 3 of them with him. They explored the space curiously, sniffing at equipment and making soft chirping sounds. One of them, the smallest with darker scales, climbed into Dennis's lap and fell asleep. You named them yet? Amara asked, not looking up from her work. Ash, Dust, and Storm, Dennis said, stroking the sleeping cub's head. Seemed to fit their coloring. Storm's the little one? Yeah, she's the brave one, though. First to try new things. Ash and Dust are bigger, but they follow her lead. Amara smiled despite the tension. Pack dynamics. Even at this age, they're establishing hierarchy. She paused as a new file decrypted. Got something? The research vessel was last docked at Station Meridian, 3 weeks before you found it. The cargo manifest listed scientific equipment and biological samples. Biological samples, Dennis repeated bitterly. They called living babies samples. There's more. Cross-referencing with Academy staff who were at Meridian during that time period. More files opened. 4 Academy personnel made the trip. 3 researchers and 1 administrative assistant named Roland Voss. Dennis looked up. I know that name. Voss works in the xenobiology department. I've seen him around. Amara felt her pulse quicken. He works in my department. He had access to Subject 47 Theta's containment area. He could have falsified the records about the cubs being deceased. She pulled up Voss's financial records, pushing her clearance to its limits. What she found made her stomach turn. 3 large deposits in the past 4 months, each from shell companies linked to exotic animal traders. He was selling them, she whispered. He was selling Deathworld creatures to private collectors. The lab door opened and Lieutenant Cardoso entered, his expression grim. Dr. Okonkwo, the inspector's ship will dock in 6 hours, and we have another problem. The Thornback's vital signs are deteriorating. She's dying. Dennis stood up carefully, cradling Storm. Can't we treat her? Even animals in zoos get medical care. Commander Tanaka won't authorize medical resources for a condemned specimen, Cardoso said. Then we change his mind, Amara said firmly. Lieutenant, I have proof that Academy personnel were involved in illegal trafficking. Roland Voss falsified records and sold those cubs to Exotic Horizons. The Thornback isn't an escaped research subject. She's a victim of a crime. Cardoso examined her evidence, his face darkening. This is enough for an arrest warrant. But it doesn't change the inspector's orders. It changes the context, Amara argued. We're not dealing with a dangerous animal that needs to be destroyed. We're dealing with a mother whose children were stolen. A soft sound made them all turn. The Thornback's cry echoed through the station's ventilation system. Weaker than before, but unmistakable in its meaning. Storm woke up in Dennis's arms and answered immediately, her small voice high and urgent. Ash and Dust joined her, the 3 cubs calling to their mother in distress. They know she's dying, Dennis said. We have to do something. Cardoso's communicator buzzed. "Lieutenant, this is Medical Bay 7. We're receiving multiple requests from crew members asking about the Thornback's condition. Some are volunteering to assist with treatment if it's authorized." More messages came through. Engineers, cargo handlers, mess hall staff all asking the same questions. How could they help? Was the mother going to survive? What would happen to the cubs? Amara pulled up the station's internal forums on her screen. Hundreds of posts had appeared in the past hour. Crew members from dozens of species were sharing their thoughts. Many talked about their own children, their own families. Some shared stories of helping animals in need on their homeworlds. One post from a cargo pilot named Ruth Abrams had been shared over 300 times. "I watched the security footage. That creature had every chance to hurt people. She didn't, she just wanted her babies. If we kill her for that, what does that make us?" "Public opinion is shifting," Cardoso said, reading over Amara's shoulder. "This isn't just about one creature anymore. People are watching how we handle this." Dennis carried Storm to the door. "I'm going to her. She needs to know her cubs are safe." "That's against protocol," Cardoso said, but his voice lacked authority. "I'm already under arrest. What are they going to do, arrest me twice?" Dennis looked at the lieutenant with quiet determination. "She trusted me enough to come to my door instead of breaking through it. She trusted me not to hurt her children. I have to show her that trust wasn't misplaced." Amara stood up. "I'm going too. I can monitor her vital signs, maybe stabilize her enough to buy us time." Cardoso sighed. "You're both going to get me demoted." But he didn't stop them. They made their way through the station with the cubs following Dennis like small shadows. Personnel stepped aside to let them pass, and Amara noticed something remarkable. People weren't showing fear. They were showing respect. Some even nodded in approval. When they reached Habitat Ring C, the Thornback had collapsed on her side. Her breathing was shallow, her wounds still seeping blood, but when she heard the cubs' voices, her eyes opened. Dennis knelt beside her, Storm still in his arms. He placed the small cub on the floor, and she immediately ran to her mother, pressing against the massive head. Ash and dust followed, all three cubs crying and nuzzling the wounded Thornback. "I'm sorry," Dennis said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know someone had stolen them from you. I just found them dying in the dark and I couldn't leave them. I would never hurt them. I promise." The Thornback made a sound softer than before. Amara's tablet translated it as single word. "No." She knew. She understood. Amara opened her medical kit and pulled out scanners. Her body temperature is dropping. Multiple internal injuries. Without treatment, she has maybe 3 hours. "Then we treat her," said a new voice. Dr. Helen Foster, the station's head veterinarian, approached with a medical cart. Behind her were 3 more medical staff, all carrying equipment. "Commander Tanaka didn't authorize this," she said with a slight smile, "so I didn't ask permission. Sometimes it's easier to apologize than to get approval." Other crew members appeared. Ruth Abrams brought heated blankets. An engineer named Paulo Santos brought mobile power units for the medical equipment. A botanist named Dr. Kenji Sato brought synthesized nutrients designed for deathworld biology. They worked around the Thornback while she lay still, allowing them to help. She understood somehow that these beings were trying to save her life. Her cubs remained pressed against her, and she curved her body protectively around them even in her weakened state. Amara administered pain medication and began sealing the worst wounds with synthetic tissue. Dr. Foster monitored vital signs while other crew members assisted. It was unprecedented. It was against regulations. It was a dozen different violations of protocol. It was also the right thing to do. 2 hours later, the Thornback's breathing had stabilized. The immediate danger had passed. She was still critical, still weak, but alive. Dennis sat beside her, one hand resting on Storm's back, the other near the Thornback's massive head. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for trusting us." The Thornback's eyes met his, and Amara saw in that gaze something that would fuel her research for years to come. This was not a mindless predator. This was a thinking, feeling being who understood sacrifice and love and hope. "Dr. Okonkwo," Cardoso's voice came through her communicator. "Inspector Chiric's ship has docked early. He's demanding immediate access to the specimens, and he's not alone. He brought a team of exterminators." Amara looked at the wounded mother and her cubs. At Dennis, who had risked everything for creatures he barely knew. At the crew members who had come together to help. Then we'd better prepare for a fight, she said quietly, because some things were worth fighting for. Regardless of species, regardless of protocol, regardless of the cost, family was family. And this family had found each other against all odds. They weren't going to be torn apart again. Inspector Chirruk's claws clicked against the deck plates as he strode through Station Prometheus 7, his bird-like head tilting with sharp, jerking movements. Behind him, 6 armed exterminators carried weapons designed specifically for deathworld creatures. Beside him, Commander Tanaka walked with visible tension. "This is highly irregular, Commander." Chirruk's translator rendered his speech in clipped, precise tones. 4 hours delay in responding to a containment breach. Unauthorized medical treatment of a hostile specimen. And now I learn your crew has been fraternizing with the creature. The situation is more complex than initial reports suggested, Tanaka said carefully. Complex? Chirruk stopped walking. A deathworld predator escaped containment. The complexity ended there. These creatures cannot coexist with civilized species. History has proven this fact repeatedly. They arrived at Habitat Ring C to find a scene that made Chirruk's feathers bristle. The Thornback lay on her side, surrounded by medical equipment and nearly 40 station personnel. The 3 cubs played nearby under Dennis's watchful eye, while Dr. Okonkwo and her medical team monitored the mother's vital signs. What is the meaning of this? Chirruk demanded. Dennis stood up, Storm climbing onto his shoulder. This is a family reunion that someone tried to prevent. That is a deathworld predator with offspring, which makes it exponentially more dangerous. Exterminators, prepare to execute the specimens. Belay that order, Tanaka said firmly. Inspector, there is evidence of criminal activity related to these creatures. Until that investigation concludes, they are not specimens. They are evidence. Chirruk's eyes fixed on the commander. You are allowing sentiment to cloud your judgment. I have authority from the Galactic Council to handle deathworld threats. Your objection is noted and overruled. Amara stepped forward, holding her tablet. Inspector, before you proceed, you should review these findings. The cubs were stolen from their mother by an Academy staff member named Roland Voss. He sold them to illegal exotic animal traders. The mother was then logged as having deceased cubs to cover up the theft. Irrelevant, Chirruk said. Illegal trading does not change the fundamental nature of the creatures. It changes everything, Ruth Abrams said, pushing through the crowd. It means we're the criminals here, not them. Other crew members voiced agreement. The corridor filled with voices, human and alien alike, all arguing for the Thornback's life. Chirruk raised his wings for silence. Your species are allowing emotion to override logic. This is precisely why deathworld protocols exist. You lack the objectivity necessary to handle such threats. Dennis felt Storm's small claws dig into his shoulder as the cub sensed the tension. With respect, Inspector, you're wrong. We're not lacking objectivity. We're recognizing something you refuse to see. This mother didn't attack anyone during her escape. She had hundreds of opportunities. She chose not to. Coincidence or temporary pacification from sedatives. For 3 hours, through weapons fire and barriers, while tracking her cubs across half a station, Dennis shook his head. That's not sedation. That's intelligence and self-control. Dr. Foster added her voice. Inspector, I've examined this creature thoroughly. The scarring on her body indicates she's protected others before. Defensive wounds consistent with guarding behavior, not hunting. The cubs respond to commands and show advanced problem-solving skills. This is not typical predator behavior. All deathworld creatures show superficial intelligence, Chirruk countered. It means nothing. Then explain the collars, Amara said. She held up images of the woven plant fiber around each cub's neck. These were made by the Ravis people, a civilization you declared extinct. These cubs were raised in a culture that domesticated thornbacks for thousands of years. The mother was captured near a destroyed settlement. We didn't just take a wild animal's cubs. We took the children of someone's companion, possibly the last living being who remembers that civilization. The inspector examined the images with clear disdain. Stone Age primitives playing with predators. Their extinction proves the folly of such relationships. Their extinction happened under suspicious circumstances. Amara continued. The settlement was destroyed 4 years ago, cause unknown. Now we find evidence of illegal trafficking in deathworld creatures from that same planet. Don't you find that timing interesting? Chirruk's feathers ruffled. You are suggesting a conspiracy theory to delay proper protocols. I will not be manipulated by human sentimentality. A new voice cut through the argument. Roland Voss pushed through the crowd, his face pale. Inspector, I need to report that Dr. Okonkwo has been accessing confidential files without authorization. She's trying to frame me for crimes I didn't commit. Amara turned to face him. Is that why you have 3 offshore accounts with deposits totaling 2 million credits from exotic animal dealers? Is that why your DNA was found in the cargo hold where Dennis found the cubs? Voss's expression hardened. Those are fabricated records. You have no proof. I have transaction logs. I have testimony from Exotic Horizons employees willing to cooperate with authorities. And I have this. Amara pulled up a video file. Security footage from the night the cubs were separated from their mother. Watch carefully. The footage showed the research wing 3 months earlier. Voss entered the Thornback's containment area late at night, accompanied by 2 unknown figures in unmarked uniforms. They sedated the mother and took 3 cubs from the nesting area she'd created. The Thornback woke during the theft, throwing herself against the containment field, but the barriers held. Her cries echoed through the empty laboratory. The footage ended with Voss logging the cubs as deceased in the official records. The corridor went silent. Even Chirruk seemed taken aback. You separated them, Dennis said, his voice shaking with anger. You took her children while she was unconscious and then lied about it. For money. Voss backed away. It was just business. Deathworld creatures are valuable. No one was supposed to get hurt. No one was supposed to get hurt. Lieutenant Cardoso stepped forward. That mother nearly died trying to find her cubs. Station security fired on her. Mr. Wright risked his career to save them. And you call it business? The Thornback made a sound low and threatening. It was the first time since her capture that she'd shown any aggression. And it was directed entirely at Voss. The cubs responded, their small voices joining their mothers in a chorus of anger. Exterminators. The creature is becoming hostile, Chirruk said. This proves my point. Execute them now. But the exterminators hadn't moved. They were staring at their equipment, at the readings showing the Thornback's emotional states, sir. One of them said slowly, the creature's aggression is targeted. She's not showing generalized hostility. She's responding to a specific threat. To him, he pointed at Voss. She recognizes him, Amara said. She remembers what he did. Chirruk looked between the Thornback and Voss, his certainty wavering for the first time. That level of memory and discrimination suggests intelligence, Dr. Foster finished. Emotional intelligence, the ability to hold grudges and recognize individuals. These are not mindless predator behaviors, Inspector. These are the behaviors of a thinking being. Storm chirped on Dennis's shoulder and he gently lifted her down. The cub ran to her mother, followed by ash and dust. The 3 cubs positioned themselves beside the Thornback, and together, the family watched Voss with eyes that understood exactly what he'd done to them. Commander Tanaka, Chirruk said slowly, it appears this situation requires more investigation than I initially believed. However, my orders regarding Deathworld creatures remain clear. They cannot be allowed to remain on this station. Then where? Ruth Abrams demanded. These cubs were nearly dead when Dennis found them. Their mother almost died getting to them. Where are they supposed to go? That is not my concern, Chirruk said. My concern is the safety of this station's population. Your concern should be justice, Dennis said quietly. These creatures didn't ask to be here. They didn't ask to be separated. They didn't ask to become evidence in a trafficking case. All they want is to be together. If that's too dangerous for your protocols, then maybe your protocols need to change. The crowd murmured agreement. Amara saw the shift happening, felt it in the air. This wasn't just about one family anymore. This was about how the galaxy treated beings from death worlds, about whether intelligence and emotion mattered more than biology and fear. This was about whether compassion could overcome protocol. And the answer, written in the faces of 40 crew members who had risked their careers to save a wounded mother, was becoming clear. Change was coming, whether the inspector liked it or not. 12 hours after Inspector Chirruk's arrival, Station Prometheus 7 had transformed from a research facility into a battleground of public opinion. Crew members who had never spoken about politics were suddenly posting long arguments in station forums. Engineers debated philosophers. Cargo handlers quoted ethics textbooks. And at the center of it all, A wounded thornback and her 3 cubs became symbols of something larger than themselves. Dennis hadn't slept. He sat in the temporary habitat that maintenance crews had built in Cargo Bay 3, watching Storm, Ash, and Dust play while their mother rested nearby. The bay was large enough to give them space, secure enough to satisfy safety protocols, and far enough from sensitive areas to calm nervous personnel. But it wasn't a solution. It was a delay. "You should eat something," Amara said, entering with 2 meal containers. "Starving yourself won't help them." Dennis took the food without enthusiasm. "Chiric's calling in more council representatives. He wants a formal hearing on whether Deathworld creatures can demonstrate sufficient intelligence to warrant protection status." "That's actually progress," Amara said, sitting beside him. 2 days ago he wanted them dead immediately. Now he's considering alternatives, only because half the station threatened to strike if he didn't. Amara smiled slightly. Democracy in action. Storm noticed Amara and trotted over, climbing into her lap with the confidence of a creature who had never been taught to fear. The cub's scales felt warm and slightly rough, like sun-heated stone. She made a soft chirping sound and closed her eyes contentedly. "They trust so easily," Amara said, stroking Storm's head. "That's what gets me. They should be wild, suspicious, but they're not. They were raised to trust, to cooperate, to see other beings as potential friends rather than threats." "The Ravis people taught them that," Dennis said, "before someone destroyed their civilization." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Ash and Dust wrestle near their mother. The thornback's eyes tracked her cubs with obvious affection, occasionally making soft sounds when their play became too rough. Lieutenant Cardoso entered, his expression serious. "We have a problem." Inspector Chiric received new information. "There's a 4th cub." Dennis's head snapped up. "What?" "Thornbacks have litters of 4 to 6 offspring. The collars you found suggest there were 4 cubs. We only have 3. Amara felt her stomach drop. "Where's the 4th? "That's what Chiric is demanding we find out. He says if there's another Deathworld creature loose on this station, his exterminators have full authority to sweep and eliminate." Dennis was already standing. "There's no 4th cub here. I searched that entire research vessel. I only found 3. "Then where is it?" Cardoso asked. The thornback suddenly became agitated, standing despite her injuries. She moved to the bay door and made a sound that Amara's tablet struggled to translate. The words came out fragmented. "Find, must, small one, alone, afraid." "She knows where it is," Amara said. "Or she knows the 4th cub was taken somewhere else." Dennis pulled up his salvage records. "The research vessel's flight path. Let me check what stations or ships it docked at before I found it." The data revealed a trail. The vessel had stopped at Station Meridian, then at a private dock near the outer rim, then drifted for 3 days before Dennis's salvage crew found it. "The private dock," Amara said. "That's registered to a ship called Silverscale. It's a luxury vessel owned by a Soluvian merchant named Prax. Cardoso ran the name through security databases. Prax has a record, multiple citations for exotic animal trafficking, but nothing ever stuck. He claims diplomatic immunity as a trade representative. He has the 4th cub," Dennis said with certainty, "and if he's been keeping it for 2 weeks, it might already be dead." The thornback made that desperate sound again, and her 3 cubs responded with distressed cries. Storm jumped from Amara's lap and ran to her mother, and all 3 cubs pressed against the thornback's legs. "We need to search that ship," Dennis said. "We have no legal authority," Cardoso replied. "Prax's vessel is technically foreign territory. We'd need a warrant which requires proof of wrongdoing, which we can't get without searching the ship. Then we don't search legally," Dennis said flatly. "Mr. Wright, I can't authorize an illegal boarding operation." "You don't have to authorize it." "I'll go alone." "That's suicide," Amara said. "Prax has private security. They're authorized to use lethal force against intruders." Dennis looked at the thornback, at her desperate eyes, at the cubs who were sensing their mother's distress. She came through weapons fire to reach 3 of her children. "I can take a risk to find the 4th. "Then you're not going alone," Amara said. "I'm coming too. Dr. Okonkwo, I cannot officially support this," Cardoso said carefully. "However, if 2 crew members happen to take a maintenance shuttle to inspect docking port 17, and if that shuttle happened to accidentally dock with the wrong vessel, and if those crew members happen to conduct an unauthorized safety inspection that revealed illegal contraband, well, accidents happen. Dennis met the lieutenant's eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't get killed. And if you find that cub, document everything. We'll need evidence for the council hearing. 2 hours later, Dennis and Amara floated in zero gravity near the Silver Scales docking port. Dennis had done hundreds of salvage operations, but never breaking and entering. His hands shook as he worked on the airlock override. You okay? Amara asked over their private comm channel. Terrified, Dennis admitted. But I keep thinking about that mother's face. How she trusted me with her children. I can't let her down. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. They entered carefully, moving through luxurious corridors filled with expensive art and exotic decorations. Behind glass cases, Dennis saw creatures from a dozen deathworlds all trapped in tiny enclosures. This is sick, Amara whispered. These are living beings, not collectibles. They followed sounds deeper into the ship. Soft crying like a kitten in distress. The sound led them to a climate-controlled suite, where a Saluvian merchant lounged on cushions, watching holographic entertainment. And in a small cage beside him, barely larger than a shipping container, a fourth cub lay listless and weak. What are you doing on my ship? Prax demanded, his scales flushing with anger. Dennis didn't answer. He was staring at the cub, at its dull eyes and shallow breathing. It was dying. That creature is my legal property, Prax said. Purchased from certified dealers. You have no right to be here. Certified dealers? Amara's voice was ice. You mean Roland Voss, who's currently under arrest for trafficking stolen Deathworld creatures? Your certified dealer falsified research records and separated cubs from their mother for profit. I don't know what you're talking about. Dennis moved toward the cage. I'm taking the cub. Touch my property and I'll have you arrested, Prax said. I have diplomatic immunity. You have nothing. I have documentation, Amara said, her tablet recording everything. I have evidence of trafficking. And I have 40 witnesses back on the station who watched a mother nearly die trying to reach her stolen children. Your immunity won't protect you from public opinion. Public opinion? Prax laughed. Do you think the galaxy cares about one Deathworld animal? 3 days ago I would have said no, Dennis said, carefully opening the cage. But you'd be surprised what people care about when they actually see what's happening. The cub was even smaller than Storm. Its breathing labored. It made a weak sound when Dennis lifted it, and his heart broke at how light it felt. You're making a mistake, Prax warned. I will file charges. You will lose your positions, possibly face prison time. Then we'll face it together, Amara said. But we're not leaving this creature to die in a cage. They backed out of the suite, Dennis cradling the cub against his chest. Prax followed, shouting threats, but he didn't physically try to stop them. Perhaps he sensed that these humans were beyond threatening. Perhaps he realized that some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. Or perhaps he simply saw in their eyes the same desperate determination that had driven a wounded mother through walls and weapons fire. The determination to protect family, no matter the cost. Back on the shuttle, Dennis held the cub while Amara administered emergency treatment. It was so weak, so fragile, nothing like the healthy cubs back on the station. Come on, Dennis whispered. Your family is waiting. Your mother is waiting. You just have to hold on a little longer. The cub's eyes opened slightly, focusing on Dennis's face. It made a sound, barely audible, that the translator rendered as a single word. Safe? Dennis felt tears on his face. Yes, you're safe now. I promise. You're safe. The shuttle accelerated toward Station Prometheus 7, carrying 2 criminals, 1 dying cub, and the hope that sometimes breaking the rules was the most moral choice you could make. 3 months had passed since Dennis Wright had carried a dying cub through Station Prometheus 7's docking bay, pursued by lawyers, inspectors, and enough controversy to fill a dozen news cycles. Now he stood in Cargo Bay 3, watching 4 healthy cubs play together while their mother observed from a custom-built resting platform. The bay had been transformed. What started as a temporary holding area had become a permanent habitat, with climbing structures, water features, and environmental controls that mimicked Ravis Prime's southern climate. It was home now, for a family that had nearly been destroyed by greed and protocol. Echo's putting on weight nicely, Dr. Foster said, checking her medical scanner. The 4th cub, named for how close she'd come to becoming just a memory, wrestled with Storm near a thermal pool. Hard to believe this is the same creature we nearly lost. Dennis smiled, watching Echo pin her sister with a playful growl. Thornbacks are survivors. Their whole planet taught them to be tough. Or maybe she just had something worth surviving for. Amara said, entering with Commander Tanaka and Inspector Chirrut. The inspector had remained on the station far longer than his original assignment required, observing the Thornback family with academic fascination. His initial hostility had gradually transformed into something resembling respect, though he'd never admit it directly. The council has reached a decision, Chirrut announced, based on 3 months of observation, testimony from 47 crew members, and documented evidence of advanced intelligence and emotional capacity. Subject 47 Theta and her offspring have been granted provisional sentient status. Dennis felt his knees go weak. Sentient status? It means they cannot be destroyed, sold, or treated as property, Tanaka explained. It also means someone needs to be their legal guardian, someone who understands their needs and can advocate for their welfare. The council has reviewed several applications, Chirrut continued. Zoos, research facilities, even private collectors who claimed they could provide better care. All were rejected. He paused, his bird-like eyes fixing on Dennis. There was one application from a salvage worker with no formal training in xenobiology, no advanced education, and a history of violating quarantine protocols. Under normal circumstances, this application would have been dismissed immediately. Dennis's heart sank. I understand. I'm not qualified. Actually, Mr. Wright, you're the only one qualified, Chirrut said. The Thornback chose you. When given opportunities to bond with trained handlers, professional xenobiologists, and experienced animal care specialists, she consistently preferred your presence. Her cubs respond to your commands better than anyone else's. You are, by all measurable standards, their pack. Are you saying... Dennis couldn't finish the sentence. I'm saying congratulations, Guardian Wright. You're now responsible for 5 deathworld predators. May your primitive gods have mercy on your soul. Amara laughed. Was that a joke, Inspector? I don't joke, Chirrut said, but his feathers ruffled in what might have been amusement. However, I do acknowledge when my initial assessments were incorrect. These creatures are not mindless predators. They are a family, and families, I've learned, deserve protection regardless of what world they come from. The Thornback, hearing the conversation, rose from her platform and approached Dennis. She lowered her massive head and he reached up to touch her scarred face. 3 months ago, he would have been terrified. Now it felt natural, like greeting an old friend. Thank you, he whispered, for trusting me, for showing everyone that deathworld creatures can be more than monsters. The Thornback made a sound that no longer needed translation. It was gratitude, affection, and recognition all rolled into one vocalization that transcended species. There are conditions, Tanaka said. The habitat will remain here on Prometheus 7, which has been designated as a pilot program for deathworld integration. Other stations will be watching how we handle this situation. Success could change policies across the galaxy. And failure? Dennis asked. Failure would set back deathworld rights by decades, Chirrut said bluntly. No pressure. We won't fail, Amara said firmly. The Thornback family has already proven they can coexist with other species. Now we just need to prove the galaxy can coexist with them. The bay door opened and a stream of visitors entered. Ruth Abrams brought fresh thermal bedding she'd designed specifically for Thornback physiology. Paulo Santos carried new enrichment toys built from salvaged materials. Dr. Sato wheeled in a cart of deathworld-appropriate food supplements. Over the past months, the Thornback family had become Station Prometheus 7's unofficial mascots. Crew members stopped by during breaks to watch the cubs play. Children pressed their faces against the observation windows, delighted by the creatures that were supposed to be terrifying. The Thornback herself had become a calming presence, her patient dignity teaching everyone that intelligence and danger could coexist. There's something else, Cardoso said, entering with a data tablet. We've been monitoring communications from Ravis Prime. There are signs of life in the southern continent. Someone's still there hiding in the ruins. Dennis looked up sharply. More Ravis people? Possibly. The Galactic Council is sending a diplomatic team to investigate. If there are survivors, they'll want their companion animals returned. Dennis felt a complex mix of emotions. Joy that the Ravis people might not be extinct, sadness at the thought of losing the family he'd helped save, but mostly hope. If their original people are alive, that's where the Thornbacks belong, he said quietly. Not in a cargo bay on a space station, no matter how nice we make it. The Thornback made a sound, and Dennis's translator rendered it in words that made everyone pause. Pack. Different. Still pack. She's saying we're all her pack now, Amara said softly. The Ravis people who raised her. Dennis who saved her cubs. All of us who fought for her family. We're all connected. Storm climbed onto Dennis's shoulder, her favorite perch, and chirped at the gathered crowd. Ash and Dust flanked their mother protectively but without hostility. Echo, still smaller than her siblings but growing stronger every day, sat at Dennis's feet and looked up at him with trusting eyes. You know what this means, don't you? Ruth said with a grin. If we're pack, you can't leave. You're stuck with us. Dennis laughed, and it felt good. Real. Like something that had been broken inside him had finally healed. I think I can live with that. Commander Tanaka cleared his throat. Guardian Wright, you'll receive official training in Deathworld creature care. Dr. Okonkwo will supervise the scientific aspects of the program. Lieutenant Cardoso will handle security protocols. This is going to be the most scrutinized habitat in the galaxy. Bring it on, Dennis said. We've already survived the hard part. The hard part? Chirrut asked, proving that love and loyalty aren't limited to civilized worlds, that a mother's determination to reach her children can break through walls and weapons and protocols, that humans from a death world can recognize the value in creatures from another death world. Because we understand survival, we understand adaptation, we understand what it means to be dangerous and gentle at the same time. He looked at each person gathered in the bay, this unlikely collection of scientists, soldiers, engineers, and pilots who had come together to protect one family. Earth taught us to fear nature, but also to work with it, to find the line between predator and partner. The rest of the galaxy sees death worlds as threats to be contained or destroyed. But humans see potential. We see intelligence in places others see only danger, and maybe that's our real gift to the galaxy. Not our technology or our ambition, but our ability to look at something terrifying and ask, what if we could be friends? The Thornback rumbled agreement, and her cubs gathered around Dennis in a protective circle. Pack behavior, family behavior, proof that the boundaries between species were more flexible than anyone had believed. Chirrut observed the scene with his sharp eyes. I will file a report recommending expansion of the Deathworld integration program. Other creatures, other families deserve the chance you've given this one. But I will also note that success depends entirely on finding humans foolish enough to risk their lives for beings they barely understand. I think you'll find plenty of volunteers, Ruth said. Foolishness is kind of our specialty. As the visitors dispersed and the bay returned to its normal rhythms, Dennis sat with the Thornback family in comfortable silence. Storm dozed on his shoulder. Echo curled against his leg. Ash and Dust wrestled nearby, their mother watching with patient affection. This wasn't the life Dennis had imagined 3 months ago. He'd been alone then, working salvage runs and going home to empty quarters. Now he was guardian to 5 Deathworld predators, ambassador for an entire species, and part of a pack that included beings from a dozen different worlds. You know the crazy thing? He said to Amara, who had stayed behind to check final medical readings. I'm happy. Really happy. For the first time in years. That's because you found your purpose, she said. Some people search their whole lives for a reason to matter. You found 4 of them in a broken cargo hold dying in the dark, and you chose to care when protocol said you shouldn't. That's not foolishness, Dennis. That's heroism. That's exactly what a hero is, Amara said. Someone who does the right thing when it's hard, when it's dangerous, when everyone says you're wrong. You saw suffering and you stopped it. You saw injustice and you fought it. You saw a mother's love for her children and you honored it. If that's not heroism, I don't know what is. The Thornback made a soft sound as if agreeing. Her eyes met Dennis's, and in that gaze was understanding that transcended words. She had come through fire to reach her cubs, and he had risked everything to keep them safe. They had both learned the same lesson. That family wasn't about biology or species or protocol. It was about choice. About deciding that some connections mattered more than rules, more than fear, more than the comfortable distance between predator and prey. It was about pack. And this pack, this impossible combination of Deathworld survivors, had proven something the galaxy desperately needed to learn. That compassion could bridge any gap. That intelligence came in many forms. That love was universal. As Station Prometheus 7 continued its orbit above the gas giant, as the galaxy debated and discussed and slowly began to change its policies, One salvage worker sat with one Thornback family and knew a simple truth. They had won. Not just their case, not just their survival, but something bigger. They had shown the galaxy what humanity did best. They had looked at something dangerous and seen potential. They had faced something terrifying and offered friendship. They had stood between death and life and chosen life every single time. That was the human way, the deathworld way, the way of survivors who understood that the universe was harsh, but it didn't have to be cruel. That danger and gentleness could exist in the same heart. That the deadliest predators could also be the most devoted family, and somewhere in the ruins of Ravis Prime, if the reports were true, more survivors waited to reclaim their companions. More families waited to be reunited. More stories waited to be told about the bonds between species who should have been enemies but chose to be friends instead. Dennis looked at Storm sleeping on his shoulder and smiled. The galaxy was changing, one pack at a time.